There is a voice that speaks inside the mind of every woman, and it does not always sound like her own. Sometimes it arrives as certainty, cold and absolute, telling her what she must believe before she has had the chance to feel it. Sometimes it arrives as judgment, harsher than any critic she has ever met, standing just behind her thoughts, arms folded, waiting for her to fail. And sometimes, rarely, it arrives as something else entirely, as courage she did not know she possessed, as clarity that cuts through years of doubt, as a quiet authority that makes her stand a little straighter in rooms where she once shrank. Who is speaking? Where does the voice come from? The one that argues with her at 3 a.m, the one that tells her she is not enough, the one that occasionally, just occasionally, tells her exactly what to do and turns out to be right. There was a man who spent his life trying to answer that question. He filled notebooks with dreams. He carved stone with his own hands to understand what his patients could not say in words. He believed that beneath the floor of the conscious mind, there is a second house, older, darker, full of rooms no one remembers building. And in one of those rooms, he said, in every woman who has ever lived, there waits a figure, not a memory, not a person, a presence. He called it the Animus. This is the story of that presence, where it comes from, what it wants, and what happens to a life when it is finally allowed to speak. Carl Jung did not discover the Animus in a laboratory. He found it the way a man finds a locked door in a house he thought he knew, completely, by accident, in the dark, while looking for something else. He had been listening to his patients' dreams for years, and he began to notice a pattern that logic could not explain. Certain figures kept appearing again and again across different women, different countries, different centuries of the mind. A stern old man standing at the edge of a forest, a king who would not let her pass, a stranger who spoke with absolute conviction about things she had never studied. These figures were not memories of fathers or brothers or lovers. They were something stranger. They belonged to no one, and yet they belonged to everyone. Jung came to believe that beneath the personal unconscious, that private cellar where we bury our own forgotten wounds, there lies a deeper stratum entirely, a shared inheritance. He called it the collective, unconscious, and he believed it was populated not by memories, but by patterns, ancient shapes of experience, worn smooth by thousands of generations of human life, the way a riverbed is worn smooth by water that has long since moved on. He called these patterns archetypes, not ideas, not beliefs, older than belief. They do not think, they enact. And the psyche, Jung understood, does not speak the language of logic. When it wishes to reveal its deepest truths, it speaks in symbol, in image, in the strange, wordless grammar of dreams. A door is never only a door. A drowning is never only a drowning. And a man who appears in a woman's dream, unbidden, is very often not a man at all, but a messenger from that older house beneath the house, wearing a face because the unconscious has no other way to be understood. This messenger, Jung said, is the animus, the unconscious masculine, principle that exists quietly within the psyche of every woman. It does not arrive all at once. It is not planted, fully formed, waiting only to be found. The animus grows the way a root grows, in darkness, slowly, shaped by everything that presses against it. It is shaped first by the father, whose voice becomes, for a child, the first sound of the outside world speaking judgment, protection, or indifference. It is shaped by brothers, by teachers, by the culture that whispers from the earliest years what a woman is permitted to want and what she is not. It is shaped by every story absorbed before the age of reason, the fairy tales, the silences at the dinner table, the sentence spoken once by a stranger and never forgotten. All of it sinks below the surface. All of it becomes material. And out of this material, the unconscious begins, without permission, to build its figure. This is why the animus so often appears in dreams not as one face, but as many, because it is not a person, but a chorus of everything, masculine that has ever pressed itself upon the psyche and been left unintegrated, unspoken, unowned. He appears as the wise old man, and when he does, he speaks of meaning, the hunger in every woman's life for something larger than the day-to-day, for a truth that organizes the chaos into purpose. He appears as the king, and when he does, he speaks of authority, the ancient and often forbidden question of who has the right to rule her own life, her own choices, her own kingdom of decisions. He appears as the warrior, and when he does, he speaks of will, the capacity to fight for what matters, to draw a line, to refuse. He appears as the philosopher, and when he does, he speaks of thought, the confidence to reason without apology, to hold an idea up to the light and call it her own. He appears as the teacher, guiding her toward what she does not yet know, as the judge, weighing her against a law she never wrote, as the priest, demanding devotion to something greater than the self, as the stranger at the crossroads, offering a path she has not yet dared to take, as the guide through the forest at night when every other light has gone out, and sometimes quietly as the lover, not of the body, but of the soul, the one who makes her feel, for the first time, entirely seen. Each face is a fragment. Each fragment is a question the unconscious is asking in the only language it has. But not every figure who lives in that inner house is gentle. Some remain in the dark far too long, and darkness changes what it touches. When the animus stays unconscious, unexamined, unspoken, never brought into the light of awareness, it does not disappear. It hardens, and it begins to speak not as a guide, but as a tyrant. This is the shadow side of the archetype, and it wears familiar clothing. It sounds like the voice that insists there is only one correct opinion, and she holds it, and anyone who disagrees is simply wrong, a rigidity that feels like strength but is, underneath, a kind of fear-wearing armor. It sounds like coldness in moments that call for warmth, and inexplicable distance from her own feelings, as though something inside has quietly turned its back on the heart. It sounds like the harshest possible judge, presiding over her own worth, a self-criticism so relentless it begins to resemble cruelty, though the voice insists it is only being honest. It looks like the need to control what cannot be controlled, a grip that tightens the more uncertain life becomes. It looks like perfectionism that never rests, because somewhere inside, an unseen figure keeps raising the bar the moment it is reached. It looks like an argument that never ends, a mind at war with itself, one part accusing, one part defending, both exhausted, neither ever winning. It looks like impossible standards, applied to lovers, to friends, to the self, standards borrowed from a voice that was never truly her own to begin with. None of this, Jung would insist, is a flaw of character. It is simply what happens when a powerful inner figure is never invited to the table, when he is left, instead, to rule from the shadows, unseen and therefore unquestioned. A guest who is never acknowledged does not leave. Quietly, he begins to run the house. And yet, this is the quiet miracle at the center of Jung's psychology. The very thing that wounds and darkness can heal in the light. When a woman begins the long, unglamorous work of turning toward this inner figure, naming him, listening to him, no longer mistaking his voice for the whole of her own mind, something in the architecture of the self begins to shift. The tyrant does not vanish. He transforms. The same force that once produced rigidity begins to produce discipline. The same force that once produced coldness begins to produce clarity. The same relentless inner critic, faced honestly, begins to sharpen into something closer to wisdom. This is the integrated animus, and its qualities are unmistakable in those who carry it well. It looks like courage that does not announce itself, the quiet willingness to walk into a difficult room and speak an unpopular truth. It looks like discipline that comes not from punishment, but from purpose, the steady architecture of a life built on her own terms. It looks like independence that is not isolation, but wholeness, the sense of standing complete, needing no one to complete her. It looks like confidence that has stopped performing and started simply being. It looks like creativity given structure, a wild idea finally built into something that can stand on its own. It looks like resilience that has stopped fighting itself and started, instead, facing outward. It looks like clear, thinking in a moment of chaos, and a kind of inner authority that does not need to raise its voice, because it has nothing left to prove. The animus, integrated, does not make a woman more masculine. It makes her more whole. It becomes, in Jung's language, a bridge, a living connection between the conscious mind and the deep, symbolic intelligence of the unconscious, through which meaning, purpose, and inner direction can finally pass. It is in dreams that this figure speaks most honestly, because dreams do not flatter, and they do not lie the way the waking mind so often does. A mountain appears, and it may speak of ambition, the long, difficult climb towards something worth becoming. A bridge appears, and it may speak of transition, the crossing from who she has been into who she is not yet. A sword appears, and it may speak of discernment, the capacity to cut cleanly through confusion and name what is true. A tower appears, and it may speak of isolation or a vision, the high, lonely place from which a wider view becomes possible. An eagle rises, and it may speak of perspective, of the self finally lifted above its own smallness. A king sits upon a throne, and it may speak of the long, postponed question of her own authority. An old man waits at a threshold, and it may speak of wisdom she has not yet claimed. A guide extends a hand in darkness, and it may speak of trust, the willingness to be led, for a while, by something wiser than fear. A temple stands in silence, and it may speak of the sacred, of something within her that deserves reverence. A door stands closed, and it may speak simply of the next unlived part of her life, waiting. No symbol means the same thing twice. Jung was careful never to offer a dictionary for the soul. The meaning of any image belongs first to the dreamer, and only she can say, with honesty, what a mountain means when it rises inside her own sleeping mind. The world has changed enormously since Jung sat in his study, listening to dreams by lamplight, and yet the animus has not retired. It has simply changed its clothing. It speaks now through the ambition that drives a woman to build something entirely her own, and through the leadership that asks her to make decisions no one else can make for her. It speaks through the creative work that demands she trust an idea before anyone else can see its value. It speaks, quietly, through the endless mirror of social media, where an unconscious judge stands behind every comparison, whispering that she is not yet enough. The shadow animus, updated for a new century, still delivering the same old verdict in a newer language. It speaks through the private architecture of self-worth, through every relationship in which she must decide whether to abandon herself to be loved or to remain herself and risk being alone. It speaks in every quiet moment of personal growth when an inner voice insists she is capable of more than she has yet dared to attempt. The archetype does not require castles or swords to make itself known. It requires only a mind willing to notice when an inner voice claims to be the whole self and is not. Jung gave a name to the long labor of becoming whole. He called it individuation, not the pursuit of perfection, which is a fantasy, but the slow, often uncomfortable process of becoming who one already secretly is. It is not the elimination of darkness. It is the refusal to remain unconscious of it. To integrate the animus is to take a step inside that process that few are taught to take. It does not mean becoming harder or colder or more like the figures who once ruled from the shadows. It means something quieter and far more difficult, learning to hold the masculine and the feminine within the self not as enemies, but as partners, thought and feeling, structure and flow, authority and tenderness, not one replacing the other, but both, finally, in the same room, speaking to each other. Instead of past each other, this is the marriage that happens nowhere but within. And it is, Jung believed, one of the great unfinished tasks of every human life. Somewhere, tonight, a woman will lie awake, listening to a voice inside her own mind that insists it knows exactly who she should be. She may mistake it for her only self. She may spend years obeying it without once asking who is speaking. But there is another possibility. She might, one day, pause in the middle, of that voice's certainty and ask, simply, is this mine? And in the asking, something ancient shifts. The stranger in the house beneath the house stops being a ruler and becomes, at last, a companion. Jung once wrote that the meeting with oneself is, among all meetings, the most uncomfortable. Perhaps that is because the self does not arrive alone. It arrives accompanied by every figure it has ever refused to face, and every strength it has not yet dared to claim. The voice inside you that is not entirely your own, it has been waiting, patiently, in the dark, for a very long time. Not to be obeyed, not to be silenced, only to be known. And perhaps that is the quiet, unfinished work of every life, not to escape the stranger within, but to finally sit across from him in the candlelight and listen. If this journey into the depths of Carl Jung's psychology has inspired you, consider supporting the channel by subscribing and leaving a like. Every subscription helps keep these timeless ideas alive, allowing more people to explore the wisdom of psychology and philosophy. Until our next journey into the hidden world of the human mind, remember, the greatest discoveries are not found in distant places. They are found within ourselves.